I never told anyone in my husband's family about the inheritance. Not the $3.5 million from my late grandmother, not the investment portfolio that had quietly grown to nearly $8 million over the past decade. To them, I was just Sarah, the timid, broke girl from the wrong side of town who somehow trapped their golden boy, Daniel. And I let them think that. For 12 years, I let them believe I was poor, uneducated, struggling, because I wanted to see who they really were, beneath the designer clothes and fake smiles. But the day my sister-in-law, Victoria, threw her charity gala for me, everything changed. What she meant as humiliation became her greatest regret. Let me tell you how I got there. My husband, Daniel, came from old money. His family owned commercial real estate across 3 states, luxury car dealerships, and a private equity firm. They lived in gated estates, vacationed in the Maldives, and spoke about money the way most people talk about the weather, constantly and without shame. When Daniel and I met 13 years ago, I was working as a barista at a coffee shop. He was finishing his MBA. We fell in love over conversations about books, philosophy, and dreams. He never cared that I lived in a studio apartment with secondhand furniture. He loved me for who I was. But his family, that was a different story. The first time I met Daniel's mother, Margaret, she looked at my Target dress and dollar store earrings like I had arrived wearing garbage bags. His father, Richard, asked what my people did for a living with thinly veiled disdain. And Victoria, Daniel's older sister, she smiled sweetly while her eyes calculated my net worth down to the penny. "So, Sarah," Victoria had said during that first dinner, swirling her wine, "what do you do?" "I'm a barista," I'd replied. "I also take online courses when I can." Victoria's smile had widened. "How industrious! Good help is so hard to find these days." Daniel had stiffened beside me, but I'd placed a hand on his knee. I smiled back at Victoria. Let her show herself. Let them all show themselves. What they didn't know was that my grandmother, the woman who'd raised me after my parents died, had been a quiet financial genius. She had started with nothing, invested wisely, lived modestly, and passed away leaving me everything. By the time I met Daniel, I had more liquid assets than their entire family's annual income. But I never told them. I never corrected Margaret when she gave me her old clothes, since you probably need them. I never flinched when Richard suggested I sign a prenuptial agreement to protect Daniel's future. I never argued when Victoria threw me a charity baby shower when I was pregnant with our first child, complete with donations from her wealthy friends for the poor mother. I endured it all. I watched. I remembered. Because people reveal their true character when they think you're powerless. And the Hayes family revealed everything. But 12 years into my marriage, Victoria crossed a line she couldn't uncross. It was a Tuesday when Daniel came home looking uncomfortable. We were sitting in our modest 3-bedroom house, nothing like his family's estates, but comfortable and paid off, with my money, though they didn't know that. "Sarah, I need to talk to you about something," Daniel said, his voice tight. "What's wrong?" He sighed deeply. "Victoria is planning an event. She's calling it a Lift Sarah Up Gala." I felt my blood run cold. "What?" "She's organizing a charity fundraiser for you, for us. She's inviting all her wealthy friends, her social circle, everyone. She's telling them that I'm struggling financially because I married someone from unfortunate circumstances, and that she wants to help us get back on our feet." The room went silent. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears. "She's doing what?" I asked slowly. Daniel looked miserable. "She's sold tickets for $500 each. She's already raised $75,000. She wants to present it to you at the gala in front of everyone. She's calling it giving back to the less fortunate." Mom and Dad are supporting it. They think it's generous. I sat there, processing. 12 years of subtle insults, condescending comments, pitying looks. And now this? Public humiliation disguised as charity. When is this gala? I asked calmly. 2 weeks from now, Saturday night. Sarah, you don't have to go. I'll tell them no. I'll tell them this is insane. I looked at my husband, sweet, kind Daniel, who'd always defended me, who'd chosen me over his family's approval. Time and time again, he deserved better than the charade. No, I said quietly. I'll go. Sarah! I'll go, Daniel, but on one condition. What condition? Trust me. Just trust me. And know that I love you more than anything in this world. Daniel looked confused, but he nodded. He'd always trusted me. That night, after Daniel fell asleep, I sat at my computer. I opened the files I'd kept locked away for 12 years. Bank statements, investment portfolios, property deeds, stock certificates, legal documents from my grandmother's estate. All of it in my name. All of it secret. All of it about to become very, very public. I made phone calls. I contacted my financial advisor, my attorney, my accountant. I made arrangements. And then I planned exactly what I would wear to Victoria's charity gala. The 2 weeks passed slowly. Victoria called several times, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Sarah, darling, I'm so excited for the gala. We've raised nearly $100,000 for you. Isn't that wonderful? You must be so relieved. It's very generous, I'd reply softly, playing my role. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything, dear. Just accept it graciously. That's all we ask. Oh, and Sarah, please dress appropriately. Nothing too flashy. We want people to see the genuine need. I agreed. I promised to dress modestly. The night of the gala arrived. It was being held at the Hayes family's country club, the same place where Victoria had gotten married in a $200,000 ceremony 5 years earlier. I dressed carefully. A simple gray dress from a thrift store, worn shoes, no jewelry except my wedding ring, my hair pulled back in a plain ponytail. I looked exactly how they expected me to look. Poor, humble, grateful. Daniel wore a suit, though not an expensive one. He held my hand in the car. Sarah, we can still leave. We don't have to do this. Yes, we do, I replied. We really, really do. We arrived at the country club. Valet parking, a red carpet. Inside, the ballroom was decorated like a charity telethon. Banners reading, "Lifting up the less fortunate" and "Hope for all" hung from the ceiling. Round tables filled with Victoria's wealthy friends in designer gowns and tuxedos. A stage at the front with a microphone and a giant projection screen. And there, in the center of it all, was Victoria. She wore a floor-length emerald gown, diamonds dripping from her neck and ears, her hair styled in an elaborate updo. When she saw me, her eyes lit up with predatory satisfaction. Sarah, Daniel, you're here. She rushed over, air-kissing both my cheeks. Oh, Sarah, darling, I'm so excited for the gala. We've raised nearly $100,000 for you. Isn't that wonderful? You must be so relieved. Come, we've saved you seats right up front. She led me to a table directly in front of the stage. Margaret and Richard were already seated there, along with several of Victoria's wealthy friends. They all turned to look at me with expressions of exaggerated pity. Poor dear, one woman whispered to another. I had no idea things were so bad. Victoria is a saint for doing this, another replied. I sat down. Daniel's jaw was clenched. I squeezed his hand under the table. Wait. The evening began with dinner. Overpriced, tiny portions of food that probably cost $300 per plate. Victoria stood up between courses, tapping her glass with a fork. Everyone, thank you so much for coming tonight. As you all know, we're here for a very special cause. My dear sister-in-law, Sarah, has been struggling for years. She came from poverty, married my brother out of love, which is admirable, but unfortunately that love hasn't been enough to provide financial stability. People murmured sympathetically. I saw some wiping their eyes. Victoria continued, her voice wavering with fake emotion. Sarah works hard. She does her best, but sometimes life deals us difficult hands, and that's why we're here. To lift her up, to show her that she's not alone, that the Hayes family takes care of its own. Applause filled the room. Victoria beamed. Margaret dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief. Richard nodded approvingly. Then Victoria pressed a button, and the projection screen lit up with photos of me, working at the coffee shop, shopping at discount stores, walking through our modest neighborhood. Photos taken without my knowledge, displayed like evidence of poverty. This is Sarah's reality. Working minimum wage jobs, unable to afford nice things, living in a home that's, well, humble at best, and raising two beautiful children in these conditions. I felt Daniel trembling with rage beside me. I held his hand tighter. Wait. But tonight, Victoria announced dramatically, with your generous donations, we've raised $100,000 to help Sarah and Daniel get back on their feet. The crowd erupted in applause. People were standing, cheering. Victoria gestured for me to come up on stage. Sarah, would you come up here, please? All eyes turned to me. The room went silent, waiting. I stood slowly. I walked to the stage, my worn shoes clicking softly on the floor. I climbed the steps. Victoria handed me the microphone, her smile victorious. Sarah, dear, would you like to say a few words to thank everyone for their generosity? I took the microphone. I looked out at the sea of pitying faces, the people who'd paid $500 each to watch my humiliation. And then I smiled. Thank you, Victoria. I do have a few words. I turned to face the audience. My voice was no longer soft or timid. It was clear, strong, and steady. First, I want to thank everyone here for your generosity. It's truly remarkable how quickly people will open their wallets when they think it makes them look good. Victoria's smile faltered. Sarah? I ignored her. For 12 years, I've watched this family and their friends treat me like I'm less than human, less than worthy. I've heard the whispers, the pitying looks, the charity disguised as kindness. I've accepted Margaret's hand-me-down clothes. I've smiled through Richard's comments about my unfortunate background. I've endured Victoria's condescension, her subtle cruelty, her need to remind me at every opportunity that I don't belong in this world. The room was dead silent now. Victoria had gone pale. And I let it happen. I let you all believe I was poor, helpless, desperate, because I wanted to see who you really were. I wanted to see what kind of people measure human worth by bank accounts. And you showed me. Repeatedly. Enthusiastically. Margaret stood up. Sarah, this is inappropriate. Sit down, Margaret, I said firmly. She sat, shocked. I continued. You want to know the truth? The real truth? I'm not poor. I've never been poor, not since my grandmother died when I was 21 and left me everything she'd built. I pulled papers from my bag, the same worn canvas bag they'd mocked for years. I handed them to Victoria. What is this? Victoria whispered. Bank statements, investment portfolios, property holdings. Read them. Victoria's hands shook as she unfolded the first page. Her eyes widened. The color drained completely from her face. "That's not possible," she breathed. "Read it out loud, Victoria," I commanded. "Let everyone hear." Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. "Savings account balance, $3.2 million. Gasps filled the room. "Keep reading," I said. "Investment portfolio, $8.4 million. Property holdings, $2.3 million. Victoria looked up at me, her face a mask of shock and horror. "This totals nearly $15 million in assets." The room erupted. People were talking over each other. Margaret and Richard looked like they'd been slapped. I took the microphone again. "That's right. $15 million. Money I inherited, invested wisely, and grew over the past 15 years. Money I never needed to flash around or use to make myself feel superior. Money that I've lived modestly with because I learned from my grandmother that wealth without character is worthless." I looked directly at Victoria. "You raised $100,000 tonight. That's very generous. I make that in investment returns every 2 weeks." Victoria started crying. Not delicate tears, but ugly, humiliated sobs. "I own this country club." I continued calmly. "I bought it 6 months ago through an LLC when I heard it was for sale. I'm your landlord, Victoria. I'm everyone's landlord here. This building, the golf course, the tennis courts, all mine." Richard stood up, his face red. "This is outrageous. If you had this money, why did you let us think—" "Let you think what?" I interrupted. "That I was beneath you? You did that all on your own, Richard. I never lied. I just never corrected your assumptions. You saw my modest clothes and decided I was worthless. You saw my simple life and decided I needed charity. You measured my value by what you thought I had, not by who I was." I turned back to the audience. Every single person in this room paid $500 to watch a poor woman be humiliated, to feel superior, to pat yourselves on the back for helping the less fortunate. But you were never helping anyone. You were buying a front row seat to judgment and cruelty disguised as kindness. I walked to the edge of the stage. "So here's what's going to happen with that $100,000 you raised. I'm donating it to an actual charity, one that helps women escaping poverty for real, not as a spectacle for rich people's entertainment. And I'm matching it. 100,000 from your donations, 100,000 from me. In Victoria's name. So everyone will know that the woman who organized a public humiliation for her sister-in-law needed her victim to teach her what real generosity looks like." Victoria was sobbing openly now. Margaret had her face in her hands. Richard looked like he might have a stroke. Daniel stood up from his seat. He walked to the stage, climbed the steps, and stood beside me. He took my hand. "I'd like to say something," Daniel said, taking the microphone. "Sarah asked me to trust her tonight. She didn't tell me what she was planning, but I want everyone in this room to know something. I fell in love with Sarah when I thought she had nothing. I married her when my family threatened to disown me for choosing someone they considered beneath us. I've spent 12 years watching the woman I love endure cruelty and condescension with grace and dignity. And tonight, I've never been more proud to be her husband." He turned to his family. "Mom, Dad, Victoria, I've tolerated your treatment of Sarah because I hoped you'd eventually see her the way I do, as an incredible woman with more integrity in her little finger than this entire room has collectively. But you never did. And now, I'm done. Sarah and I are leaving. We're cutting ties with all of you until you can learn to treat people with basic human decency, regardless of what you think their bank account looks like. Margaret stood up, reaching for Daniel. Son, please! No. For 12 years, Sarah has been patient. She's been kind. She's been silent. Well, I'm not silent anymore. She's my family. She's my priority. And if you can't respect her, you can't be part of our lives. We walked off the stage together. The room was chaos. People shouting questions, Victoria still crying, Richard yelling something about ingratitude. But we didn't stop. We walked straight through the ballroom, past the valet, to our car, a modest sedan that I'd kept on purpose, even though I could have bought the most expensive car on the lot. In the car, Daniel turned to me, his eyes shining. How long have you been planning that? He asked. 12 years, I replied. Every insult, every pitying look, every moment they made me feel small, I remembered all of it. And I waited for them to go too far. And tonight, they did. Daniel laughed, a real, genuine, liberating laugh. You're incredible, terrifying, but incredible. I learned from my grandmother. She always told me that the most powerful people don't need to announce their power. They just need to know when to reveal it. We drove home in comfortable silence. When we pulled into our driveway, I looked at our modest house, the house I'd purchased with cash 12 years ago, the house Victoria had mocked countless times. Should we buy a bigger house now? Something that matches your actual net worth? Daniel asked. I thought about it. Then I shook my head. No, I like this house. It's comfortable. It's home. It's ours. The only thing I'm changing is the people we allow into it, and that list just got a lot shorter. Daniel kissed me. I love you, Sarah. I loved you when I thought you were a struggling barista, and I love you now knowing you're a secret multimillionaire. You're the same person. Exactly, I said. That's the point. I'm the same person I always was. The only thing that changed tonight was their knowledge, and that revealed everything I needed to know about them. We went inside. Our kids were asleep upstairs, unaware that their mother had just burned down 12 years of family pretense in one spectacular hour. I changed out of my thrift store dress, hung it in the closet next to my casual Target clothes and the designer pieces I owned but never wore. I looked at myself in the mirror. I was still me, still Sarah, still the girl who worked in a coffee shop and fell in love with a kind man. But now I was free from the weight of their judgment, their pity, their casual cruelty. The next morning, my phone exploded with messages. Margaret begging for forgiveness, Richard demanding a family meeting, Victoria sending incoherent texts about how I'd ruined her reputation. I blocked them all. 3 weeks later, I received a formal letter from Victoria, a real apology, not the performative kind, but genuine. She wrote about her insecurities, her need to feel superior, her realization that she'd become exactly the kind of person she claimed to despise. I read it. I filed it away. Maybe one day I'd respond. Maybe not. Because the truth is, I didn't do what I did for revenge. I did it for liberation. Liberation from the burden of their opinions, their expectations, their narrow definitions of worth. Money didn't change who I was. It never did. But revealing it changed how they saw me, and that revelation showed exactly what their love and charity were really worth. Absolutely nothing. I'm still Sarah. I still shop at Target sometimes. I still drive my modest car. I still live in my comfortable house. But now I live without the weight of their judgment. And that freedom is worth more than all $15 million combined. Because real wealth isn't about money. It's about knowing your worth regardless of what anyone else thinks. And that's something no amount of charity galas can ever teach you.